Well, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Good morning to you. This is Bill Bullock, and I'm coming to you live again from the Biblical Lifestyle Center in Texarkana, USA. It's good to be back with you today, and I'm looking forward to spending a little Sabbath time with you. This is the week we engage in our studies of Parsha Tietzi. When you go out to war is the way it would be translated normally into the English language. Parsha number 49. The 49th episode, as it were, of Torah's Great Download. Week number 49 of the study course, Tietzi, Deuteronomy 21:10 through 25:9. Good Sabbath to you. Let's go into the heavenly realms and be seated with the Messiah in heavenly places, and let's see things through his eyes, through his perspective, and let us get the holiness and the glory and the goodness and the vision that the Holy One desires for us to have on this special Sabbath of the year. We are studying the Torah in a way that we call walking in the light. We're taking a quest, a journey, a great odyssey, a great quest to discover the secret wisdom that's been encoded in Torah's timeless stories. Thank you for joining me on this quest. Thank you for walking with me in the light. Let it not be an intellectual or educational exercise. Let it instead be a life-changing, life-bringing effort that we engage in, an enterprise that we engage in together in partnership with the Creator of the universe, in the footsteps of his Mashiach, his Messiah. So we're on this quest to discover the secret wisdom that's been encoded in Torah's timeless stories. That's an exciting thought process. And we understand the teaching style of the Creator of the universe, which has been adopted by Moshe. It was first modeled to Moshe by the Holy One at the burning bush in the Mount Sinai, and now he is modeling it to us on the plains of Moab as he finalizes his life, the last 36 days of his life. He is taking the example of teaching methodology that the Holy One taught him at Mount Horeb and Mount Sinai and producing it again in us, for us. So his matters of teaching style is that he knows that, as the Holy One knows, because he created us this way, we all love a good story. You do, I do, children do, adults do, people on their deathbed do. We love a great story. We love to get involved. We love to get engaged with that story, not just to think about it in academic or intellectual or legalistic or emotional terms, but to actually engage in something bigger than ourselves. And that's what stories are. There's something that's bigger than the moment, bigger than ourselves. So he uses this teaching methodology of telling us stories. Are you ready for the storyteller to do his work today? This week we're going to have a special kind of stories. Moshe is going to step into a different level of teaching through his stories. He's going to give us hypothetical stories. He's going to give us what-if scenarios. This is the kingdom of heaven's situation room. What would you do? What will you do if you face situations like this? What will be your modus operandi? What will be your approach? What will be your goal? What will be your objective? And what will be your systematic methodology of dealing with these situations? Heavenly situation room is open. Moshe is inviting us to come in. He's got a whiteboard set up for us, and he's going to put out on that whiteboard for us to review little scenarios, little situations, and we are in the situation room. What will you do when this situation presents itself? All of these are designed to prepare us not just to deal with daily life, although that's a critical factor of it, to deal with tomorrow, to deal with the week after that. It's preparing us to be able to function at the time of the Messianic kingdom. When Messiah comes to earth to reign for 1,000 years in his Messianic kingdom, we are to rule with him, and we must know the protocols of walking in the light, of being veterans of the situation rooms of heaven. So let us go forward now as we begin to study this. Let us reconnect with the great Creator's vision. Let us sing the Shema, the Hear, O Israel. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Listen, pay attention, hear, tune in, resonate with, respond to the words of the Creator of the universe. Hear, O Israel, the Holy One, our God. He is a complete and ultimate unity, drawing all things together nearer to Him at all times into an orbit around His gravitational pull. He is an echad. He is a unifying factor, the unifying factor of humanity, of creation, and of life. Come to the Holy One, Shema Yisrael. And He is the Echad, and blessed be His kingdom, and His name, and His attributes, and His character, and His ways, forever and ever, world without end, Leolam Vaed. All right. Now that we have gotten a foretaste of what's happening, and we are in the heavenly throne room, we are in the situation room, we are in the chambers of the King, viewing things on earth from His perspective as opposed to the perspective of the human flesh, and its reactions and its instincts and its hormonal infusions. Now that we're seeing things through His eyes because we're in the Sabbath mode, let's get ourselves acclimated. Let me ask you at least a few questions designed to help you lift your heads into the heavenly realm and adjust to the light that is here in the kingdom's chambers, and begin to acclimate thinking and brain processes and feelings and every aspect of the humanity that you are lifted into the heavenly realm, and begin to acclimate your thinking and your speaking and your countenance to the seventh day level of spirituality. He blessed the seventh day, and He made it kadosh. He made it emanating of His holiness, a fountain, a river of holiness energy from heaven flowing into the earth. That's where we are. That's where we're going. Now, the questions I'd like to ask you to acclimate you today are these. How do you make decisions and choices as you encounter mortal life's crossroads and crucibles? When you feel the pull of your flesh triggers, trauma triggers, panic buttons, when you feel your flesh and its instincts and its humanity and its fallen animal nature beginning to pull upon you, or you get your pseudo-intellect and your sense of arrogance and pride and your sense of of ego and self-interest active, how do you begin to deal with that? And how do you begin to deal with situations that present themselves to you? What is your methodology for decision making? What framework of priorities do you apply to choices that you make and decisions that you make on a daily life? What sources of input do you allow into your mind and into your heart? What sources do you consult when you have decisions and choices to make, and your flesh is pulling you one way, and your pseudo-intellect and your arrogance and the indoctrination of your culture or your ethnicity or your society or your collective group that you associate with is pulling you another way, and you hear the voice of heaven speaking something else, and you know the Torah has something written somewhere about this sort of thing. What are your sources? How do you decide? How do you make your decisions? What sources do you consult and allow to input themselves into your thought process? Are you impulse driven? Think about it. Have you this week been impulse driven in the way you've approached situations and circumstances and people? Are you pseudo-intellect or pop psychology driven, or cultural indoctrination, or ethnic indoctrination, or philosophical or religious indoctrination driven? What drives you to make decisions the way you make decisions, to feel about things and talk into things and speak through and act into things as you do? What is driving you? Are you like the raging nations, driven by the feelings and emotions, or driven by the theories and the concepts and the principles of some theology or philosophy or religion? What is driving you? Why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you interacting with the world the way you're interacting with the world? Is it possible to do something different than the raging nations do? Is there a higher level? Is there a higher way to behave? Is there a more visionary approach to life than dealing with the emotions and the drives and the instincts and the urges and the appetites of the flesh on the one hand, or trying to apply principles and concepts and abstract theologies and philosophies and ideologies on the other? Is there a more excellent way? What if we worked according to the covenant? What if we prioritize the manual of life experience from the situation room that Moshe has given to us? What if we listened to the voice of the Holy One, and his was the most influential voice in the process of decision making? What if we really lived from heaven to earth as opposed to from earth to earth or earth to heaven? Welcome to Parsha Tietzi. When you go out to war, when you go out to conflict, when you go out into trauma, when you go out into relational difficulty, when you go out into situations. When you go out into situations, how will you respond? What will be your modus operandi? What are your rules of engagement for the socialization battlefield of life? With that in mind, let's do our call to worship. We want to get ready for this. This is a great download that Moshe has waiting for us and for you and for your heart and for your life and for your family line and for your legacy. This is important. So let us sing our call to worship, our Baraku. Baraku et Adonai Hamborak. Baruch Adonai Hamborak Leolam Vaed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher charbanu mikol ha'amin, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah. Amen. Blessed is the source of all blessings, he who blesses and is blessed. Blessed is the Holy One. Are you, O Holy One, who has blessed the blesser forever and ever, world without end. Blessed are you, O Holy One, great King, sovereign of the universe, who has set us apart and chosen us from all of the nations of the world to give us his Torah. Blessed are you, O Holy One, our God, giver of the Torah. And now, with this precious gift in hand, with our minds and our hearts open to you, seated with Messiah in the heavenly places, in the courts of the great King, now would you open our eyes, O Holy One, that we may see wondrous things in your Torah. For we are just strangers in the earth, so please do not hide your instructions for living a well-lived, more excellent way life from us. Amen. Well, now gather round, all you children of the Most High who are still listening. Gather round. Open your heart, open your ears, open your minds. Listen for the great storyteller to begin, because it's story time again. Moshe is in the middle of his great end-of-life, critical, strategic briefing session with 36 days to live. He is pouring out everything that's been poured into him. He has been a man who walked with the Holy One as a man walked with his friend, and talked with him as a man talks with his friend. A man who spoke to the Holy One face to face and was encountered by him on numerous occasions over the course of 40 years. Now Moshe has come to the end of his life, and Moshe is pouring out this wisdom for us. He wants us to perpetuate and carry on this divine revelation of what the purpose of mankind is, and what the purpose of the holy nation of Israel and those who affiliate and associate through covenant with them are. What's our purpose? This critical briefing session is in progress, and Moshe is teaching us how to effectively establish and maintain a kingdom of heaven-scented society upon the earth. A radically transformed, different type of people that approaches life totally differently and has an impact upon the world that is healing and restorative and not destructive or in any way divisive to the world. He is going to set us up and teach us how to establish a beachhead or a command center for heaven's realm to come to earth and have an effect and impact upon people in earthly realms. And bringing the kingdom of heaven to earth. He's going to teach us what it really means when Yeshua prayed, may your kingdom come, may your will be done on earth as it is in heaven, not just one day, this day in our lives. So we are called to go forth. When you go forth, he begins this parcel. When you go out, when you yatsa, when you branch out, when you begin to have this impact upon the world, when you yatsa, you go as diplomats of the king's courts. You have to have been in the king's courts to go out as a diplomat of the king's courts. You have to have been in the king's presence and be changed by the king's presence and empowered and inspired by the king's presence and his wisdom before you can go out and effectively communicate on behalf of the king. So we go forth, yatsa, as diplomats of the king's courts and of the king himself and his persona, his goodness, his heart, as bearers of good tidings to the world, of good tidings of peace, of shalom, and of goodwill toward men, as agents of healing and restoration, as offering heaven's redemption and its shalom and its simcha, its joy and its fruitfulness, its tikkun, its healing and restoration. 2 weeks ago in Rhea, in the course of this great download Moshe's been giving us, 2 weeks ago he opened up a new vista for us, and he took us into the heavenly realms, and he showed us 2 pathways. This is his 2 pathways, or diverging pathways, vision download. So it began 2 weeks ago in Parsha Re'eh, and in that Parsha he began to show us there are 2 roads you can go by. There are 2 pathways laid out before you. There are 2 possibilities of moving forward in life, and depending on which road you choose, at the critical crossroads of when those come together, which road you choose will determine what level, what kind, what quality of impact you leave upon the world. So he says there are 2 pathways. There's the narrow road that the covenant calls for, the voices of the Holy One, the wisdom of the Holy One speaking out over you and awakening something inside you to go along with it and partner with him in doing that thing, the narrow road way. But there is also, of course, the raging nation's way, the way of the intellect or the way of the emotions and the fleshly instincts and the survival of the fittest, as it were. So there are 2 ways, 2 pathways diverging before you even as we speak. There are 2 ways that you could approach and experience mortal life. There are 2 ways that you could impact your household and your family and your workplace and your community and your generation and the earth and the ecosystem and the species of that ecosystem. There are 2 ways. There are along those 2 ways, there are breakpoints or high and low road landmarks. You can go the high road, the narrow way, or you can go the low road. You can go the broad way that leads to destruction. And there are landmarks at which you can make these crossroads decisions there. And how you decide at those crossroads, how you choose at those crossroads. What are the modalities and the voices you listen to and the priorities you follow at those crossroads will determine the impact of your life and the reason for which you were born, or the purpose for which you were born, and what level of performance or what level of achievement you achieve with regard to that purpose. So we are at the place of Moshe's greatest proverb. His greatest teaching is now the mortal life as a spiritual labyrinth or a maze model. Everybody is in this maze. The human condition in the fallen state is that we have these choices to make. Which way will we go? Do we have an objective? Do we know where we're trying to get? And do we understand the pathway to get there? If you ever played with a maze or walked in a maze or experienced a labyrinth experience, you know that there are choices. What choice you make will determine how long the journey is and how good the journey is and whether it achieves its objective of getting out or not. So the mortal life as a spiritual labyrinth model is being presented by Moshe. The 2 pathways, diverging vision is being presented. And this lesson is basically this, if I might summarize. Are you hearing? Are you listening? The lesson is basically this. The quality of each human being's life and his legacy or her legacy equals the quality of the various choices that he or she makes at life's critical crossroads and flashpoints along the way. There are 2 basic approaches, the narrow way and the broad path. The broad path is the way of the raging nations, and it is the fate approach, or the devil, or predisposition, or some flaw in the system, some inherent inequity in the system is causing me to do these things, and I have no choice. I'm a pawn in a great scheme. The raging nation's fate approach. Fate made me do it. The devil made me do it. Some predisposition in my nature made me do it. Some flawed system of society made me do it. That's the raging nation's way of approaching the situation room and approaching the difficult challenges of life. The raging nation's fate approach. But there is another way. And Moshe is trying to teach us this other way of the covenant nation. It's the choice approach. The choices you make are your choices. Yes, there are certain things that are decided from the foundation of the world. The grand plan was decided. It will be changed along the way. The methodology, the narrow way was blazed before you were ever born. But you have to choose that narrow way at every venture, at every juncture of the road, at every crossroads. He wants to introduce us to this a way of life that is superior to the raging nations. Not because we're morally superior, not because we're ethically superior, not because we're intellectually superior, not because we're better spokesmen in the way of having glibness or ability to articulate. The way is better because it is the Holy One's way. It is the way the Creator designed, and that is what Torah provides to us. It is the way that is talked about in Isaiah chapter 30, verse 1 or 21, where people are mostly familiar with this phrase if they've been around the Bible much. Your ears, the Holy One speaks through the prophet to Bnei Israel, the sons and daughters of Israel, in their restoration times. He says, your ears will shema, a debar, a word, a prophetic, empowering word. Your ears were shema adabar, behind you, somewhere around you, saying, this is the way. Walk in it. Now we have the choice methodology, the choice approach to life, because we actually are not bound by our instincts. We're not bound by our emotions. We're not bound by the pseudo-intellectual approaches, the ethnicities that we belong to, or the ideologies we belong to, or the cultures we belong to, or the nations we belong to, or the generations we belong to impose upon us. We have free choice, free will. The covenant nation, choice approach. Your ears will shema a debar, a prophetic utterance of direction behind you, saying, this is the way, walk in it. And the voice won't stop there. It says, but if you turn to the right hand, ellipse, you will see what happens then. Or if you turn to the left hand, that will show you what will happen then. You will be able to see the vision unfold in front of you. If you'll hear me, beloved, this is what Yeshua taught us to pray. At the end of his disciples' prayer, he taught us to pray, lead me. Those first two words are most important. And then lead me not into temptation, but deliver me from the evil one. Now, this is the concept there. This is the opening door of Shema, of a debar behind you, saying, this is the way. Walk in it. Let me put in the words of the psalmist in Psalm 23. He leads me, David said. He leads me in paths. He leads me in paths of clearness, of righteousness, of plumbness, of squareness, of levelness, of weight-bearing. He leads me in weight-bearing substantive ways, righteousness, for the sake of his name, his reputation, his plan. And yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, because he is leading me in these paths of the righteousness, I will fear no evil, for he is with me, his rod and his staff, they comfort me, and he will prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. I'll stop that reading right there, but remind you that the whole point of life now is take me to the table. Lead me through the valley. Lead me not into temptation. Lead me to the table prepared for me in the presence of my enemies. Well, this is the approach of Moshe. This is what he's trying to teach us about heavenly approach. The download this week will be about our dual citizenship with heaven and earth. Moshe will give us a training course. He will teach us about how to make healthy versus unhealthy, inspired versus educated, or fleshly choices at every critical crossroads of life. He will expand this from the personal, the micro level of shemaing the voice and shemaing the covenant and the personal things that we do individually. He will expand this to a cultural civic duty level, to a macro level. And he will give our society, as each of us fits into that society, rules of engagement to follow as we travel the narrow road that leads to life, the way that brings shalom to the world. See, as ambassadors of the great King. And that's what we are, beloved. We are his emissaries. We are his ambassadors. We have the privilege and yet the responsibility to be good emissaries and ambassadors, portraying, revealing his heart and revealing his plans and revealing his wisdom to the world by actions as well as words. As ambassadors of the King, we have a civic duty to the kingdom that we represent, to bring the scent of that kingdom, the kingdom of heaven's scent to earth, by applying the tikkun olam, healing of the creation, tikkun nefesh, healing of the individual soul approaches that are set forth in the Torah. Beginning with the Aseret HaDebrot and bearing on these things, the 10 words, I should say. 10 commandments, as they're called in the English language, falsely, I believe. But the 10 basic principles of kingdom life, all bringing those things to bear on one flashpoint situation, one flashpoint challenge at a time. So buckle your seatbelts as we get ready for Parsha Tietzi. Buckle your seatbelts, sons and daughters of the covenants. Moshe is about to take us into one of his favorite rooms in the mansion of the king. The bridegroom king's meditation manner as we look at it upon earth. It's real, but to us it's a meditation that we experience. We have to transcend realms to be able to experience any time there. Meditation manner, I call it. And in the meditation manner, there are many rooms. And one of those rooms Moshe is about to take us into, he's going to take us into the situation room. The situation room where decisions are made based upon principles of the kingdom. Welcome, one and all. We're about to have a series of whiteboard adventures in this situation room. Now that Moshe has us shemaing individually and micro level, actively listening, you might say, and responding, resonating with the Holy One, and he has us opening our eyes to see things from the heavenly perspective as opposed to through the eyes of our flesh or the eyes of our intellect. Now that he has us doing those things, he's ready to address, mortal life's stickiest situations. You know the situations I'm talking about, right? The kinds of situations that I'm talking about that we don't want to talk about in private, in public, or in good company. Situations that I'm talking about are situations that awaken lust or awaken romantic sexual desire, as some might prefer to think of it. Or situations that evoke relational drama. Family drama, personal drama, relationship drama, national drama, ethnicity drama. These kind of situations we don't like to talk about. We want to think there's some idealistic Camelot out there. We're all going to all live happily ever after. And he says, you live in a fallen world among fallen men and raging nations. You need to be able to deal with these sorts of things, situations that awaken lust and romantic sexual desire, situations involving relational drama, situations involving chronically disrespectful children, sons and daughters who stray from the path and won't come back, refuse to come back, situations of trespass and offense between human beings or between other creatures and us, and the interference of the realms of the people and their rights and their claims and their desires and their instincts. Stir up offense, and they stir up trouble, and they cause a desire in the heart to arise for vengeance, retribution, punishment of the wrongdoer, exposing of the evildoer. This is these urges that come up from the flesh and the pseudo-intellect. We have to learn how to overcome them through the king's eyes, as we have to do this in the situation room. What other situations am I talking about? Is Moshe going to talk about? He's going to talk about situations that awaken human greed, the materialistic bent, the sense of, I want what I want. I get mine. situations that invoke unproductive judgmentalism and critical spiritism. Well, people love to judge. The flesh loves to judge. The pseudo-intellect loves it even more. The false ways of doing the wings of the raging nations, the false ways of the raging nations. They love to judge and criticize. They love to condemn. They love to sit in an ivory tower and not engage in situational discussions and not see things through a bigger lens of redemption, but instead to have the right to judge. So there's situations that invoke unproductive, and that's what they are, always unproductive, judgments, judgmentalism. Moshe's going to talk to us about situations that arise from experiments with unnatural, unholy admixtures. Human curiosity likes to mix things together, put things together that don't belong. But the creation is designed in a brilliant way to have things done a certain way that will bring about fruitfulness and shalom. And humanity has its own ideas. And whenever we experiment with unnatural admixture, uncovenantal admixture, mixing things together that don't belong, from whether it be fabrics or whether it be marital relations or sexual relations, whatever it may be, nations that come together and ideologies that come together. We mix things together that the Holy One is not said to be together. And we do it from an enforcing standpoint of the human make the decision to do that. We're going to see the Situation Room show us the consequences of that, and so on and so forth. Moshe knows that while it is a good first step to believe in the Creator of the universe's existence and His goodness, much more than such a belief will be necessary and required of us if we're going to do what we're really here to do, which is to build and sustain a kingdom of heaven-centered society on earth, as the Holy One has called, planned, and written for us to do. So into the Situation Room, Moshe is going to take us. He's going to say things like, if this happens, if that happens, if this or that crisis hits your household or your heart or your community or your generation, if this or that thing happens, how will you respond? How will you fix what gets broken in the process? When cliches and catchphrases of philosophy, ideology, and religion will not heal the wounds, will not even make a dent in the pain, and will just make things worse. When the cliches and catchphrases don't work, when the bullet points and the regurgitated political positions don't work, when there's no political solution or economic solution, when there's no way to make government help you, when cliches and catchphrases don't work, how will you engage for the greater good? How will you move the needle forward for the kingdom? How will you represent the King in furtherance of His grand plan for redemption and restoration? See, the situations that Moshe is going to present on his whiteboard in the Situation Room are all at present just hypothetical and metaphoric. They're not laws. These are just expressions of, if this happens, if that happens, what will be the factors and what will be the appropriate covenant response of the narrow way. But though these are hypothetical and metaphoric, and though they may never even happen in the exact way in which they are presented, don't be fooled. What Moshe's talking about, what he's really telling, the stories he's telling us, the vision he's trying to awaken in us, and the eternal goodness that he's trying to call forth from us, these eternal lessons that he's teaching will serve us well because they are very, very real, more real than any law. And the fruit that these Situation Room discussions and instructions that Moshe is going to give us are intended to cultivate in us as we meditate upon them. And as we struggle with them sometimes, that fruit is none other than love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. You know what I'm talking about. What Moshe is trying to cultivate in us is the fruit of the Spirit, as we'll read about in the Brit Hadashah. Here's the truth. We are not called to live in or hide away ourselves in a nice, safe ivory tower or a utopian castle or a place of judgmentalism. We are not to do that. Nor are we to imagine that we control the world. We rule the world or should rule the world. Or that we can control anyone or anything about this world in this age. We have been sent as emissaries of the King into a troubled world. We have been sent to a groaning and reeling ecosystem full of badly broken people and places. People acting out in the worst ways imaginable under the influence of raw evil, shakat, corruption, and Hamas, violence, or the bent to cruelty. We've been sent into such a world. Our job in this environment, in this assignment, our job is to bring good news. It must be good news. Do you have good news for the King's people? Our job is to bring good news and to bring hope, to be vessels and messengers and inspired, contagious carriers of hope of a more excellent way to both the broken people of this world and the broken places that they have devastated. Our job is to bring good news and hope of a more excellent way. The job is tough, but it's unbelievably rewarding, and though it's anything but easy. The Holy One, you see, is sending us on to killing fields of relational mines, where a minefield has been strewn. He's sending us into the killing fields of the raging nations to deal with the badly broken people there, and the diseased and the dissatisfied and the defeated and the emotionally overwhelmed, sensuality overstimulated, darkness seduced, materiality obsessed, ethnically offended, ideologically brainwashed, propaganda indoctrinated and deceived, and pseudo-intellectually arrogant people. Take a deep breath. That's who we're sent to. We can complain about them all we want. We can sit there with our noses in the air and say, we're not like that, all we want. But that's our mission field. That's where we're sent to go. That's why we're needed to be on the earth in the first place. That's the whole purpose of the covenant and the calling, is to go to those and to bring a more excellent way. The goal is not to overreact in the flesh to the horrible things we will see and the cruel, angry, vicious, deceived peoples we will confront. The goal is to de-escalate, not escalate. The goal is to encourage, not discourage. The goal is to inspire, not challenge in a condemning way. The goal is to empower with kingdom's vision and kingdom's tools. And our assignment involves repeated 6-day-long immersion assignments. We're here on the 7th day. Hope you're enjoying the 7th day. This is our time of stepping up, stepping out of that 6-day realm. Our assignment, though, on a 6-day long basis is to immerse ourselves, to embed ourselves in that world, and yet to maintain our kingdom perspective as we do so. We have to find ways while we're embedded, while we're immersed on these 6-day-long incursions. We have to find ways to interact positively with people, with families, households, and bloodlines. To interact positively in kingdom, with a kingdom bent and a kingdom impact with nations and ethnicities and households and institutions and workplaces and political and economic and educational and informational and religious systems and marketplaces, shooks, and streets, and forums that are corrupt and toxic and deceitful to the core and dangerously dysfunctional and sometimes downright hostile. Welcome to your assignment. Welcome to your purpose for being alive. With that in mind, let's go directly to the Torah. Closing lines of Parsha Shoftim last week, Deuteronomy 21, verse 9. You will put away the burden and the guilt of innocent blood. Put away the guilt and burden of innocent blood. When you do what is straight, yashar, going forward, according to the path in the eyes of the Holy One, we have the power to reverse the curse of the innocent blood upon the earth. Well, there's going to be more to tell about this story. This is what we're doing in the Situation Room. Ha! Surely he has told us, for lifeblood I will seek out, and whoever sheds men's blood by man will his blood be shed. Whoa, these are the things that we've learned about in Genesis chapter 9, from the covenant beginning with Noah. Now we begin to see as it folds its way out and it begins to unfurl in the greater plan that we have the capacity, we have the potential, but we also have the responsibility to reverse the flow, reverse the curse of innocent blood. Now, do we do this by ourselves? Of course not. We do this under the headship and the leadership of Mashiach, Messiah, and by according to his example and his teaching of the Torah. And that's how we do it. Now, the opening lines of this week's Parsha Tietzi. Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 10. Tietzi li milkema al oiveka. When you go out, when you extend yourself, when you branch out to make war on your enemy. Unetano Adonai Eloheka beyadeka. And when the Holy One then entrusts them, your enemies, into your hands. Vishavita shivyo. And you take captives. You turn loose or free or take captives. Bira'ivat bishivya yeshet yafatoar. And you see among those captives that you freed or taken a beautiful, shapely woman. V'shachakta ba v'lachakta lech lisha. And you begin to desire her, and you would take her for your personal woman or wife. When that situation is presented to you, how will you respond? Will you respond like the nations do? Will you respond like October 7th when the perpetrators of the great attack on October 7th did? Will you let your flesh and your ideology and your religious beliefs of your right to hate other people and rape and murder other people, will you let that be your guide? Will you let some Geneva Convention be your guide point of what you can do and can't do? Or will you listen for another voice to say, this is the way, walk in it, and not veer to the right, and not deviate to the left, not deviate toward the issue of extreme legalism on the right, not deviate toward lawlessness and just doing your own thing and what you think is right in your own eyes or what you feel you want to do on the left-hand side. Do what I tell you to do. Do you hear the voice of the king saying, this is your job? And then Moshe is going to lay out situation after situation in the Situation Room. He's going to put on the whiteboard this situation, that situation. And every time he's going to put something out there, we're going to say, have we ever heard this before? Has this been part of our patriarchal or the great leaders of the Torah that are written in the Torah, from Adam to Noah to Enoch to Avraham to Yitzhak and Yaakov to Yosef? Have we heard these things before? And we'll also be saying, and if we have not heard these specific situations arise before, which many of them we have, if we have not though, how will this affect us in the future? Because Moshe is not making stuff up. He is seeing, he is revealing to us what he is seeing in the spiritual realm, what he's seeing in the past and the future as viewed through the eyes of the courts of the king. So two primary themes are going to come out in Parsha Tietzi. Knowing these two things will help us as we go through the Situation Room and watch what Moshe is doing on the whiteboard, the situational whiteboard. First primary theme of Parsha Tietzi is you must not hide yourselves. Don't book a passage to Tarshish as Jonah did. Don't go hide in an ivory tower or a cave somewhere like Lot did. Don't try to pretend you're not part of this. La, 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 la. I don't want to hear what the Republicans say, or I don't want to hear what the Democrats say, or I don't want to hear what the Europeans say, or I don't want to hear what the Chinese say. I don't want to know what they're doing. I don't want to know what the politicians are doing. I don't want to know what the medical community in its perverse state is doing. I don't want to know what the scientists that pretend to be scientists because they wear white lab coats are saying, I don't want to know. I want to believe everything that they say. You can't hide. You can't hide. You are members of the king's courts. You are courtesans. You are ambassadors and emissaries. You have an access right. You have a seat in the heavenly places, and you can't hide there. You have to come back to earth situations and go from the situation room into the situation and have an impact upon it. You must not hide yourself. You'll see these words, this phrase multiple times in the Parsha, and this is sort of a theme. Second theme is you are to put away the raw, the evil, the self-obsessed, narcissistic things. Put away the things and their impact from the midst of the community. This is what we're here. We're here to clean up the mess. You are to put away the raw from your midst. We can't fix everybody else's world, but we can keep our camp clean. We can keep our families and our houses clean. We can keep our minds and our speech clean. We can keep our emotions clean. We can keep our instincts in check. We can keep the fruit of the Spirit flowing from us because we are caught up in the life force of the living water of the Spirit, and it is caught up around us, in us, through us. So 2 themes: you must not hide yourselves. No ivory tower life for you. You must put away the raw, the evil or the selfish or the self-indulgent or the self-obsessed things from your midst. These are our job. The people of the most excellent way, which we're called to be, must choose the more excellent and inspired path, and not just do so once in a decision at a religious meeting somewhere or in a prayer session somewhere. We're to choose the more excellent way, not just once, but every day, every moment, every 6-day and Sabbath cycle, every moment, at each crossroads, in the face of each distraction, in every situation, every situation of seduction, every situation of conflict, of competing desires, every situation of irritation, aggravation, and offense, every situation of terror and fear and worry and anxiety and rejection, every situation we are to choose the more excellent way. Well, last week in Shoftim, the Holy One showed us the societal aspect of that. Our society, our culture, our cities, our villages, our communities are all supposed to be different than the ways the nations do those things. We're supposed to have judges in our gates, we said. I want to try to unpack that now. We did it last week, and I encourage you to go back and look at that if you need to. And to have different levels of infrastructure of our communities. That was the societal aspect, the macro aspect of this Diverging Pathways vision. As it is for individuals, so it is for the collectives and societies and cultures we are engaged in. Heaven's courts, Heaven's vision has a vision for each of those components as models of leadership. But now we're going to talk about making decisions in 10 situational areas. And if you'll let me kind of lead you through, in general form, what the multiple different little discussions that Moshe is going to have with us in the situation room are. Let me talk about first the kingdom priorities revealed. The kingdom's priorities are the sovereign, makes decisions. The sovereign must be ruled, must be honored in all things. We must all seek his will and his ways and his persona and bring that persona, reflect that persona on earth. We must give no dishonor or disrespect to his name by our words, by our thoughts, by our actions, by our demeanor. We must bring him glory in all that we do. We must orient all life approaches around the seventh day and our time of reconnecting, of rebriefing with him, re-energization of the great plan. We are to respect and honor our parents and our elders. We are to refrain from causing death or injury. No harm, cause no harm, do no harm to our fellow human beings, even if you think they deserve it. That's the flesh and the pseudo-intellectual ways telling you that. We are to overcome our lusts and our appetites and urges for physical, sexual, and romantic things, voyeurism, and animal-like lust. We're to respect the property rights of others and the interests of others in the worldly things of this earth. We are to govern our tongues and not speak deceptively, not present a false witness. We are to subordinate all our urges and all our appetites and all our desires and our thoughts to conquer and control and acquire and enjoy and possess other people or their assigned things to the will of the Holy One. We are to surrender to the will of the Holy One, which is to come in the volume of the book, the volume of the things that Moshe talks about in the Situation Room, the volume of the things the Holy One talked about at Sinai, the volume of the book of everything from let there be light forward to come Yeshua. Well, all those things in between, to subordinate our urges and our appetites and our desires to that will, to delight to do His will in the volume of the book, and to actually respect and honor and the covenantal rights and legitimate expectations of others. So let's just spend just the next few minutes, the last few minutes of our time together before you go to your separate classrooms or your separate meetings or your separate times of private study. Before you engage this Sabbath in its highest level, hopefully, let's do these things. Let's talk about being in the situation number one. In the Situation Room on the whiteboard, we are at war. If we don't get this down, the rest of the whole parsha will just seem like law, legalism, some form of legal code. No, do you understand the situation? The top most important thing to remember about all the situations we're going to read is we are men, women at war. Yes, we don't want to think about that, but when we are deployed on this earth in the mortal realm, when we come out of the king's courts on the end of the Sabbath and we re-enter the workday and the weekday world, the mortal world of the raging nations, we are men at war. We must behave as soldiers of the king. So this is the first thing. He says, when you go out to war. But there, in the context of war, there's going to be certain things. So he's going to focus on in, like a lens is being brought into a microscope, and he's going to bring that microscope to bear. He says, now, in the context of being at war and recognizing you're always at war, he's going to say, sometimes God is going to give you victory. And you're going to be very successful and things are going to go your way. Sometimes you're going to see the enemy is delivered into your hand for the sake of the kingdom, not for your sake. For the sake of the great grand plan of the ecosystem that needed to be rid of those people and their influence in the world for the period of time. Sometimes you're given enemies into your hand. So number one, you're a men at war. Number two, the enemy has now been delivered into your hand. It doesn't always happen this way. This is a situation we're facing. And when that situation is faced and the enemy is delivered into our hand, sometimes now we look around and there is a captive. Now, realizing that when we go to war, it's always about captives. We don't go to war just to build territory or to influence or project our religion or our philosophy or ideology or our way of government or our way of decision-making or problem-solving to the world. We don't go to war for those purposes. We're not colonists, colonial in our approach. We're not dominators. When we go to war, it's because there are captives that need to be set free. So when the context of the greater context of the war and then the greater context and smaller context of victory at the war, a time when the Holy One has given us the enemies into our hands for strategic reasons of the kingdom, then we're going to look around and we're going to see among the captives that we've rescued and or that we've taken from those who were so toxic they could not be allowed to exist upon the earth anymore at the king's plan and his direction. When those things happen, we see among the captives there's a beautiful woman. Now, what is happening to us? Why does that matter to us? Well, the woman now is a captive. She has no protector. She has no husband. She has no defender. She has no one to watch over her, to protect her, to in any way to help her. She has no financial means of survival. She has nothing. So there's a sense of responsibility, a sense of empathy, a sense of sympathy. And so something would cause us to focus our eyes on this particular captive as opposed to all the other captives that were rescued or the captives that were taken. So when we see it, what happens in us? We'll understand the Holy One knows, and Moshe knows, and he's telling us something will happen in you sometimes. You will have this thing, this fleshly urge and appetite to look upon her and see her beauty, as opposed to see what the Holy One would have you see. And when that happens, how will you respond? How will you respond when you feel these feelings and you have these desires? Oh, we've seen what the world does, how the world's armies behave. We've seen when they see something they want, they take it, they use it, they abuse it, they throw it away, they murder, they rape. That's not our way. That cannot be our way. So we have to deal with the fact that we're human beings and we have these urges and appetites, but we have to realize that we're under someone speaking into our ear behind us saying, this is the way, walk in it. And sometimes he'll give us instructions, and so that's what happens in this situation. He says, don't take her as she is. So you need to have a protocol and walk through this protocol. And as you walk through this protocol, you'll have every option to opt out if the Holy One gives you that word. And if you don't, there may be consequences. So then we get another situation. And what's the next situation that Moshe lays out for us? Now we have a blended family. We have a wife that is loved and a wife that's... why do we have two wives? But we have another wife that is loved more than the first wife. We have difference in the way of affection and the jealousies that come along with that. Everybody remember the case of Leah and Rachel and Yaakov and how that worked its way out and the preferential treatment that was provided and the jealousy and the rage. Okay, now you understand why I said, where have we heard this before? Every time a situation is presented to us by Torah, it's not a matter of legalism. It's a matter of where has this come up before? And what were the consequences of that? And what did we learn from that experience? So we have the situation. And then we have children that comes from these two different blended families. And now we have to decide who gets what in our will or in our estate or in our present gift of finances and provision and support. Who gets what? You see the conflicts, and these are real situations that real people face. And there are so many more. And the Holy One says through Moshe, I'm going to lead you with a voice that says, this is the way. Walk in it. Heed the voice, because if you turn to the right and do it from a legalistic, angry, arrogant standpoint, there will be consequences that the world will see, and it will not be what they see, the impact you leave will not be that of the king, and you will not be an ambassador of the king. And if you turn to the left and you go with just whatever feels good at the moment, whatever your urges and your appetites are, you wanted what you want because it's your turn. You haven't done anything for you lately, so you're going to just do what your flesh pleases to do. If you do that, that's the lawless way, the way to the left. And if you go to the right, you have consequences. If you go to the left, you have consequences. You must go in the way. The Holy One said, this is the way. Walk ye in it. Well, beloved, my time with you today is over. Our time around the Shabbat table has come to its conclusion. We have had an introduction only to Parsha Tietzi. There are so many situations Moshe puts on the whiteboard. So many different twists and turns of the fact situation to show you there are variables involved, but there is one way. There is always the Holy One's way. It's the narrow way that leads to life. Don't follow the broad pathway that leads to destruction. It's time for me to leave you. Shabbat Shalom. See you next week.